All right, next up, we have every U.S. major war crime in 20 minutes. That is sad.
For about 30 minutes, the aircraft circled overhead, firing repeatedly and precisely at the hospital buildings. The gunship fired 211 shells in total. Inside, the scene was a nightmare. By the time the attack ended, at least 42 people were dead, including doctors, nurses, and patients. The hospital had given its exact GPS coordinates to the U.S. military just days before, specifically to prevent something like this from happening.
Damn.
Even while the Pentagon concluded that because it was an accident, it was not a war crime. The doctors and the United Nations called for an independent investigation, arguing that a military cannot fairly investigate its own actions.
That's tough, man. That starting off strong.
But that investigation never happened. Mahmoudiya killings. The family included a 14-year-old girl called Abir and her 6-year-old sister Hadil and their parents. Their 2 younger brothers were away at school that day. These soldiers had been watching Abir from their nearby checkpoint for some time. They often saw her doing chores in the and some.
No, bro. No. I already know. I already know what's going to happen, man. I already know what's most likely what's going to happen right now. You know, obviously, I'm American, right? And I have deep respect for our troops. And I also have friends and former football teammates that are in the military or currently in the military as well. And obviously, you know, a few bad apples shouldn't make the whole tree look bad. But gotta admit, man, in the Middle East, there was some of us, like, then again, obviously every single military all across the world in the history of humankind has some messed up people, and that goes for us Americans as well. And dude, the stuff I would hear obviously from friends in the military who would tell me stories that they were told from veterans, and they'll just tell them just horror stories in the Middle East back from all the way dating back from the 80s, 90s, and even early 2000s and mid 2000s as well. The stories they will tell me, it's bad.
Investigations started, and the soldiers were arrested. Green had already left the army for
That's the thing too, right? Not only obviously they're horrible individuals, you got your own people killed too, because remember, those insurgents wanted revenge, obviously, right? So now, number one, you're just a horrible, disgusting human being, and now you got your own brothers in arms killed because of your stupid. Oh no, I can't say it. I can't say it online.
The Tiger Force started as a small group of elite soldiers in Vietnam, trained to be fast and deadly. But by May 1967, this unit had turned into something monstrous. The mission was supposed to be about finding guerrilla fighters, but it became something totally different.
Bro, I heard the Vietnam War was just an absolute hellfest. The stories I've heard, and obviously different videos I've watched as well, and also different books, I should say, that I've read over the last 10 years or whatever. It's just horrendous. That's all I could say, honestly.
Gorla Massacre. On October 20th.
Well, then again, I gotta realize, man, this goes for, I said it before earlier, this goes for every single military across the world, not just America. Obviously, this video is focusing on the atrocities that American soldiers have done recently. But you guys gotta realize, this isn't a hate American thing. Because I'm American, right? I love America, I do. And obviously, we have bad apples. And so does every single damn country on earth, right? And every damn state, city-state, empire in the history of humanity as well, right? War crimes are done by everyone in every timeline, in every decade, every century. But obviously, something that, during wartime, war crimes will always be something that's done, unfortunately. But it's just horrible to hear about all. When you read about it or you watch, media that has to do with war crimes, or if you read about something, it's horrible.
At the time, Milan was heavily bombed because it was one of Italy's most important industrial cities, and its factories were useful for supporting the war. The 451st
This is World War II, right? Because Italy was part of the Axis powers.
After the bombing, there was internal criticism of the 451st Bombing Group, but there were no real consequences. No one was punished, and Milan was devastated. The children came to be known as the Little Martyrs of Gorla. Fascist authorities used the bombing for propaganda, calling the Allies murderers of children.
The Axis powers can't really, let's be honest here, the Axis powers they weren't that great either.
On January 31st, Company H of the 2nd Battalion 1st Marines approached the small village of Tuibo at midday. Suddenly, they came under heavy fire, including from a .50 caliber machine gun. Pinned down, their captain, Edward Banks, called in airstrikes and artillery and asked for reinforcements. Even with help, though, they could not advance and stayed under fire until nightfall. At first light the next morning, the company...
Damn, how much ammo did that guy have? Jeez Louise.
Historians later describe this as a singular atrocity. The tragedy is that it was all for nothing. After the war, investigators confirmed that the submarines never carried any missiles. The weapons that the Americans were so afraid of did not exist on those boats. Kandahar.
Well, I mean,
A few inches later.
they're not. You know what? I'm gonna just shut my mouth.
Dreams that
U.S. investigators concluded that he didn't leave the base just once, but twice that night. First going to Al-Qazai, where he killed 4 and wounded 6,
Okay.
and then to Najiban.
All right. Why would you do that? Why would you do that?
The guards had forced thousands of prisoners on a death march. The American soldiers were shocked and furious, and in that atmosphere, discipline completely collapsed. What happened next is known as the Dachau reprisals. Enraged American soldiers and the liberated prisoners themselves began killing the German SS guards. Historians estimate that between 35 and
Okay, would you call that a war crime though? If you really think about it, right? I mean, if they really saw bodies, top of bodies, trains full of skeletons, prisoners of war, going on a death march and about to die anyways, and they're starving to death, and you kill the guards, is that really a war crime? Let's be honest here. So this, obviously every single one of them was horrible, right? But this was specifically, I mean, you can't, I guess by definition it is a war crime, but really, like, killing, the concentration camp guards who were just killing people over and over again. Can't really call this a massacre, right?
The U.S. Army actually investigated these killings immediately. A report confirmed that surrendered guards had been shot and that wounded men were left without medical care. Serious charges were considered, even against officers. However, General George Patton, the same general we talked about in the Biscari massacre, dismissed the case. The legal review argued that because the horrors discovered at Dachau were so extreme, it was unjust to punish the soldiers for snapping. In the end, no one was ever punished.
Yeah, I guess this is the only one where it's like, all right, I get it.
The day began with a harsh battle. American tanks attacked a group of German SS troops who held them off for hours with rockets and artillery. The Americans eventually broke through, but the real horror began after the main battle was over. While the rest of the army moved on, a smaller unit of American soldiers stayed behind in the village. They discovered a warehouse full of alcohol, and many of them got drunk. According to accounts, about 25 of these intoxicated soldiers then turned their rage on the prisoners they had captured. In total, 36 German soldiers died, and historians believe about 16 of them were executed after they had already surrendered. The details of the killings are gruesome. 10 prisoners were marched out to a meadow and shot in the back of the head. 6 others had their skulls crushed. What makes this even more shocking is who these victims were. The German soldiers were incredibly young, with an average age of just 16. They were essentially teenagers. The violence did not stop with the executions. The same group of American soldiers is accused of raping around 20 women in the village.
All right. Now, okay. See, that's where it's like, all right, man.
Same night. These crimes happened during the chaotic final rush to win the war, and there was no real accountability at the time. If you want to discuss this video or
that's freaking
checkpoint
horrible.
and walk to the
That was
home.
a freaking sad.